I'm Welton Gaddy. Welcome to State of Belief, continuing coverage of the 2020 Republican National Convention. As we get ready for a COVID-era GOP gathering, I'm joined by Interfaith Alliance President Jack Moline to get his thoughts, as we did a long time ago last Monday. Jack, thank you so much for being with us again.
Always a pleasure, Welton. Has it only been a week?
Yeah, I lost track way back there. I've heard commentators refer to this year's Republican convention as the Trump convention, and no wonder. The reported lineup features no fewer than 5 Trumps and counting. The theme for day one is Land of Promise. So, Jack, if you're listening or watching, what will you be looking for tonight?
Oh, I'll be listening and I'll be watching. I'll be looking for truth. It's actually what I've been looking for out of the White House and the Republican Party for the past 4 years. I'm okay with disagreement. I just don't like to be lied to.
And are you doing that really expecting to hear or see what you're thinking?
Well, I'm a man of faith. And look, without being too snarky about this, I'm hoping that at this point, the Republicans in general, and even the president in particular, understands that his hold on his base grows more and more tenuous as he is called out more and more on the falsehoods that he is promoting. That includes everything from his wishful thinking about the pandemic to his misinterpretation of the faith of his supporters as he panders to their values. And I'm hoping, because he wants to be reelected, that he'll wake up to that and we'll be able to have some genuine policy discussions and not just more theatrics.
I do believe you're a man of faith. The very first minutes from Charlotte, North Carolina this morning hinted at what's in store. The invocation included words, "Help us all follow Donald Trump, Lord," and darkly warned of those who claim faith but hold beliefs that fundamentalists disagree with. There was an emotional adaptation of the national anthem that I think featured the word God sung at higher and higher frequencies, and a Pledge of Allegiance that focused on condemning the, quote, Democrat convention for removing the words "under God" from the pledge, implying it is the opposing party's goal to eliminate God from every aspect of American life. Jack, is there so little the GOP can sell in positive terms that we'll see nonstop focus on bashing of Democrats and pandering to the political religious right as much as possible?
Well, it's a great question, Welton, and you've just kicked the legs out from under my hope for some truthfulness. I think that what we're looking at here is a sort of mirror reflection of what was done in a kinder and gentler way at the Democratic Convention last week. The emphasis on faith at the Democratic Convention, done, I hope, more appropriately than what you've just described, is an indication of where one of the battlegrounds is now for those people who might be considering going one way or the other. We know that there were 2 recitations of the Pledge of Allegiance in council sessions, not in the main sessions, in which "under God" was eliminated. One was one of the sessions for the Muslim Democrats, where it was omitted entirely, and the other for LGBTQA plus Democrats, where the person who recited it paused to enable people to insert it if they wanted to. But other than that, it's simply false. Now it's not time for us to go into the history of that phrase, but we all know that it was inserted into the pledge during the Eisenhower administration out of a fear that godless communists were going to try to remove God from American society. And the person who was very much behind that was the father of one of the featured speakers at this convention, Franklin Graham. So I think that we're looking at battle lines being drawn in culture wars rather than on the essential conversations we have to have, which are about the role of government, the effectiveness of government, and how we pull ourselves out of what is one of the worst years in the history of humanity in recent history.
Jack, a new survey reports 57% of Republicans saying that the number of COVID-19 deaths in this country is, quote, acceptable. 177,000 Americans. Acceptable. With that as a backdrop, is this convention just going to ignore one of the deadliest pandemics in U.S. history?
Boy, I sure hope not. I sure hope that, and this is a statement that has nothing to do with faith, it just has to do with humanity. I hope that there isn't a heart in this country that is not broken by that number and that will not tolerate the dismissal of the loss of grandparents and parents and children and dear souls, children of God who have been lost to the pandemic and have been lost in greater numbers because the pandemic has been so poorly addressed in this country. The loss of any life is a tragedy. The Talmud says one life is equal to an entire world. If you lose one life, you lose an entire world. 177,000 lives lost unnecessarily is a tragedy that conservatives have bemoaned in other circumstances and ought to be consistent.
Jack, you have so many long-standing relationships with lawmakers of every political stripe in Washington. Do you have a sense of what elected Republican officials are excited about or worrying about this week?
Well, I think anybody who's up for election is worried about being returned to office. I think that's the number one concern that they have. I'll tell you a story from a lot of years ago. A friend of mine who is still serving in Congress was serving during the Bush administration, the Bush 44, and was reelected narrowly in a midterm election. And the day after the election, a controversial member of the president's cabinet resigned from office, which he had been planning to do. And I just remember him saying, I remember my congressman friend saying to me, couldn't he have done that the day before the election? Life would have been so much easier for me if he'd done that. And I think that that's what's going on here. The announcement yesterday that Kellyanne Conway was leaving the White House is going to remove an extremely outspoken and controversial character who is an unwavering supporter of the president from the conversation. And the arrest of Steve Bannon is something else that is going to demand some kind of comment from candidates. So I think most Republicans up for election this year are concerned about what's going to happen next with the people surrounding the president. President Trump at this point is a known quantity to everyone, and every candidate is going to have to make the decision as to whether they're going to get aboard the Trump train or whether they're going to try to distance themselves. And if you look at the lineup of speakers at this convention, the answer to that is pretty obvious.
Rabbi Jack Moline is president of Interfaith Alliance, a nonpartisan, non-sectarian nonprofit defending true religious freedom for all. Jack, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts of the week ahead at the GOP convention. And we'll have a chance later on then to reflect on what actually has happened this week. All of you, look for more of our convention coverage, including interviews with leaders, activists, and delegates all week at stateofbelief.com. I'm Welton Gaddy. Thank you for watching.
Keep up the good work.